If someone has COVID-19, they breathe it out in particles. Particles that hang in the air like smoke. 1 in 3 people who have COVID-19 have no symptoms and could be breathing it out without knowing. In enclosed spaces, the virus can build up over time. So when you're inside with others, open windows regularly to disperse those particles. Stop COVID-19 hanging around.
A very good afternoon and a very warm welcome to everyone today on Wednesday, the 15th of December, to our regular Q&A sessions. This is your opportunity across a whole host of different mediums, whether you're viewing today on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or on YouTube, to ask the questions that are really important to you, and we'll attempt to answer as many of them as possible. You've joined us today for not only a special festive edition, but also an extended edition, where we'll be looking and talking much more deeply about a lot of the winter plans that we've got. This is going to be a winter, as we all know, like no other. And across BCP Council, we put aside a whole host of plans starting a few months ago around how we're going to put our arms around the most vulnerable, how we're going to protect our local economy, how we're going to make sure that our roads are as clean and safe over this winter period. And that was before, of course, the emerging situation that's happened with COVID. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, we're now clearly in a position again where COVID is the front of our minds. So we'll be exploring all of those, as well as the updated COVID situation today. And you will have your opportunity to ask questions, not just from me as Deputy Leader of the Council, but also the real experts. And I'm really pleased to be joined today by Rachel Partridge, who is the Deputy Director of Public Health for Public Health Dorset, who's joining us today to give a bit more of an update and answer any specific questions in that area. We've also got Kelly Ansell, who's our Director of Communities and the Acting Chief Operating Officer of the Council here today, and also my colleague Councillor Jane Kelly, who's our Cabinet Lead Member for Communities, who can answer some of the questions around the whole host of packages of support that we're offering some of our most vulnerable this Christmas. So as I've said, this winter is going to be very tough for a lot of people. Clearly, many people are going to be feeling very, very vulnerable and need support. Others are clearly going to want to celebrate and enjoy the festive season in a way that we just didn't get the opportunity to last Christmas as well. So our winter plan has really been designed to help to support our retailers, our hospitality sector, those most vulnerable, and also keep the roads running and make sure that our infrastructure is running as well. But first, onto the updated COVID situation. Everyone will be aware that the government announced that we have moved to Plan B because of the new Omicron variant. A bit of a reminder about what that actually means. So from the 10th of December, you now have to wear face coverings. They're required by law in most indoor settings. From the 13th of December, if you are able to work from home, you should do to give that added protection while we just uncover exactly what this new variant means. And from the 15th of December, certain venues and events will now be required by law to prove either that you're fully vaccinated or have had proof of a negative test in the last 48 hours. It's also been announced that people over the age of 18 are now able from today to book a booster dose appointment as long as it's been 2 months since the last your second dose, and you can now get your booster dose 3 months after your second dose as well. Rachel will talk a little bit more about all of the stops that the Dorset Health and Care System are pulling out to make sure that we can expand our vaccination programme as quickly as possible following the Prime Minister's announcement. And I'm really pleased to see the action that's already taken place. We're really ramping up our vaccination offer across the area, and I'll talk a little bit about that more in a moment. We generally in this also give an update on the COVID situation and the case rate. So the summary of the most recent data is that the 7-day case rate per 100,000 people is about 624, which isn't that much of a change on the previous week, was 683. So actually a slight drop. But of course, we're already seeing nationally the impact that new variant will have. Confirmed cases in the last 7 days are about 2,400. Again, a slight drop on the last period, but again, we can't be too careful. And the current COVID-19 patients in hospital across Dorset is 87. So the key messages at the moment, we're dramatically expanding our vaccination program, as I mentioned, pulling out all the stops. We do need a bit of patience while we put that all in place. It's an absolutely monumental effort that the NHS is undertaking, but our vaccine teams are out there. And even today, we've made announcements about new vaccination centres and expansions of programs across the BCP area. The best way to get your vaccination is to book ahead. So as we all know, there is a national booking service that you can do. Equally, a lot of it is GP-led, so your GPs may well be inviting you to get your booster as well. We currently have 2 vaccination centres in Dorset, one in Dorchester and one in Kings Park Hospital over here in the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area, and they have appointment slots for both children and adults. They're very busy at the moment, and walk-in availability is very limited, so it's really limited. So it's really important, if possible, that you use that national booking service. You can also get your vaccination at many pharmacies as well. The prevailing message is it's really busy at the moment. We're trying our best. Be patient, be kind, and just keep checking on that system because, brilliantly, the demand is really high. People are now realizing that it's really important to get that booster. And, also, if you have yet to have your first or second dose, please do come forward and encourage others to come forward as well. It's, as the experts are telling us, it's a clear way that we're going to be able to try and beat this new variant and try and move forward into some semblance of normality. 2 further updates, and then I'll bring in Rachel to see if there's anything that I've forgotten. Test updates in terms of the lateral flow. There's been some talk around the availability of them. We've had a confirmation from government that there is no shortage of lateral flow tests. More will be coming available for home delivery every few hours. If you're trying to order them, just keep trying. To give you an idea of the scale, yesterday alone, the government issued 1.6 million tests to people. So there is no shortage of tests. You just have to keep trying online. And then finally, on the PCR availability, again, appointments for PCR tests are available. You have to get a PCR test if you get a negative flow, or if you're showing negative lateral flow result, or you're showing symptoms. Again, high demand for those at the moment, but that is available. And again, you can book online. So they're the key COVID points. I'll just pass to Rachel as our Deputy Director of Public Health to see if there's anything that I've missed that you may wish to add. And then equally, start thinking of your questions, because we're very blessed to have Rachel with us today. If you have any specific questions, add them into the comment section on either Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter that you're joining, and we'll try and get through as many of those as possible. So I'll bring Rachel in now to see if there's anything extra that Rachel wishes to add at this stage.
Well, thank you. That was an excellent summary, Councillor Broadhead. In terms of following up on that, and I see in the questions in the sidebar, the expansion of the booster vaccination in Dorset is really rapidly moving. And it's an opportunity to say thank you to the huge number of people that are working tirelessly across the health service and also within the local authorities and community organisations and volunteers who are helping support this enormous process. So just today, I've heard that there's another 3 sites that have come on stream. So we've now got 33 in operation across Dorset and BCP area, with another 6 planned, subject to getting workforce. And that will also be supplemented by pop-ups. So increasingly, you'll see these messages about hyperlocal and pop-up clinics happening as we're working hard to identify sites that are suitable. So the message is definitely the best thing to do is try and get an appointment and book. And we know the booking system is incredibly busy, but slots are released gradually throughout the day. So if you go on and you find that there's not one local to you, continue to try, because slots are made available and all of the capacity of the existing sites have been doubled in the last couple of days. It's an absolutely amazing amount of work that's going on. Many of you will see that there's a call out to ask for volunteers, and particularly around vaccinators. So there is specific asks going out to local community. So if any of you are able to help, there'll be some links posted as part of this webinar, and you'll have seen the adverts, I'm sure. So that's a really important message. That is a very live situation, and there's huge amounts of work making it real to enable anybody to get vaccinated, whether that be first or second, or indeed the booster vaccination. So thank you to Kevin, who's in the sidebar, who's indicating other things that are popping up. And also just a thing about being patient. There isn't the need to worry or rush, or obviously the message is quite clear that this is a significant development around COVID-19. But there is a lot that we can still continue to do, as well as getting the booster and getting vaccinated. There's also all those key messages that we're very familiar with that are very important to remember. So about the washing hands, keeping good space, good ventilation, regular testing. So the importance of doing asymptomatic testing regularly, particularly before you meet vulnerable people or go into a crowded space. That's another really practical thing that you can do to help mitigate. And of course, again, that really important message about if you do have symptoms, if you are feeling unwell, please book a PCR test and self-isolate as soon as possible. Because they're all the really absolutely vital things which will slow down the spread. The booster campaign, absolutely major investment and important to do, but there's a lot that we can continue to do to look after ourselves and our family by both those other items. And you've mentioned around the face coverings coming into crowded spaces and most indoor spaces. So there is that sense of, all of us in Dorset and BCP have really reacted over the past almost 2 years incredibly well. We've done really well collectively to support each other and behave to try and mitigate transmission. And I think it's about remembering that as well as protecting ourselves through the vaccination and boosting. So I don't know if that helps a little bit, but obviously I will keep an eye on the comments and questions if anything specific.
Brilliant. Thank you for that extra update, Rachel. I told you she was the expert, didn't I? So we're really pleased to have you joining us today. I'm already seeing lots of questions coming in on our various forums, which I'll be bringing you back in shortly, if that's all right with you, Rachel. People, have specific questions about things. And if you are just joining us, remember, this is our Q&A session. We're doing a little bit of an introduction on some of the areas that we're looking at, because we are having an extended session today, so longer than normal, while we deal with all of our winter resilience plans. But do keep the questions coming, and we'll be coming to those in a moment. Before we do, I'd just like to bring my one of my other colleagues in, Councillor Jane Kelly, who is one of our cabinet lead members looking after the support that we're offering a lot of our communities. I think my personal view is, if there was one of the very few positives that have come out of the pandemic, it's a real sense of pulling together that we've all seen, particularly on our voluntary groups, all the different organizations working together in a way that we've never been able to do before. And there are a whole host of different packages that we as a council and all of those organizations are offering if you are in any way struggling this Christmas, and whether that's from things with energy bills to loneliness. There's all different ways in which we can help you. So Jane, do you want to just run through a few of the headlines of some of the support that's out there, and as we go through the questions we can pick up a little bit more detail and point people to where that help is available. Thanks for joining us, Jane.
Thank you, Phil, for the great introduction, and also to Rachel for her information about COVID currently. So ever since the pandemic started, we have had what we call our Together We Can hotline and our Together We Can volunteers. 2 years ago, 2,000 people came forward to help, and a lot of those people are still there, still able to and wanting to help. So if you're currently self-isolating and vulnerable and you don't have local friends and family to help you, please contact our helpline. I think hopefully they'll put the number, there it is, as if by magic. So that helpline can get you some assistance with food packages if you're not allowed to go out and you don't have local friends and family, and other essential items. So that number is open from 9 to 5 on Monday to Thursday and 9 to 4:30 on Fridays. And we're really happy to receive calls from people who are needing help again. In fact, it's been going on all the way through the last few months. So the other thing that we're doing, we've been very lucky to have £2.6 million from government, and that has enabled us to put our household support fund in place. So that is going to cover a lot of different things to help people. It's going to be about food availability. We've given a lot of money to local food banks to make sure that their stocks are full, because we do understand that there'll be many people who have never had to ask for help before, but this time, those things are going to happen to them that might mean they have to do that. So we want to make sure that the food banks are fully stocked. If you want to volunteer and to help with the food banks, that would be fabulous as well. So the same number can probably put you in contact with them. So the Household Support Fund is for food and also for warmth, keeping warm this winter. And that's to do with utility bills and also things like school coats for your children, shoes, those sorts of things where the costs can be quite high and you may not be able to do that. And we want your children to be warm and safe this winter. So we've been using our trusted third sector partners to distribute this funding. The schools are going to know, and they're going to have food vouchers as before, so that all the families that they know of who might need this kind of help, they will be asked if they'd like some food vouchers. The food banks, as I've mentioned, Citizens Advice, they will be helping with financial help, to advice to do with how to manage money well, and also how to get help for utility bills and the warmth help. There is an email address, I think there it is there on the screen, bcpcouncil.gov.uk, household support. That will give you all the information and the links to apply for these funding. Citizens Advice also have a phone number, as you can see. And so I would advise anyone to either, if they want to help or they need help, please contact those either phone number or email address. Website. We've also got a phone number that you can ring if you're worried about someone who's rough sleeping. St Mungo's, the company the organisation that we work with, they are absolutely fabulous. And however much people may think that individuals who are on the street are in need of help, we know that St Mungo's will have visited them. They will know about the people's circumstances and whether they want to come inside or if they're feeling very hesitant to do that. So please don't ever think that you need to help them. If you're worried, please call St Mungo's. They'll be delighted to talk to you. But actually, I think you will find that they will be known about and will be being advised. Obviously, 999 is there if you need to call emergency help. So again, donating clothes, toiletries, and also donations of money to help St Mungo's, that's on that household support website. I think that's about it at the moment, Phil. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jane. That's a really important stopping point, that household support website. That tells you about all of the different things that are available if you're struggling in the many different ways that Jane has outlined. Let's jump into the questions now. And actually, you've just set it up nicely for some of the questions that are coming in, Jane, around homelessness and those rough sleepers that are out there, because it's never nice seeing anybody rough sleeping. And as you point out, pretty much anybody that is in that position, has been offered help, and sometimes a longer process, but it never looks like that when you see them. And we've made tremendous progress, particularly over the last year, in terms of seeing the numbers really fall. But it's never enough until nobody is rough sleeping. So we've got a question from Dawn Pritchard, which has come through for Facebook, and I wonder whether maybe Kelly Ansell, who's one of our directors at the council, can come in and give a little bit more information on what we're doing in this arena. When is the council going to accept that there is a lot of homeless still living on the streets in Bournemouth, Boscombe, Southbourne? It's not right, needing help. Okay, I'll accept that some would rather be on the streets, but it's not them that want help in the winter and over the festive period. Kelly, maybe you could expand a little bit on, because we've just had another injection of cash from government as well, specifically to kind of give extra help over the winter period. But perhaps you can answer that question and talk about the great work that's going on in this area and what is really, really challenging.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Broadhead. Yeah, I just want to reassure everybody that there's a significant amount of work that happens around supporting people who are homeless, not just those who are rough sleeping and street homeless, but a significant amount of work that happens across a number of different very difficult situations for lots of different people who might need support with their housing. And our approach is really about making sure that from a street-based homelessness perspective, there is that outreach. Councillor Kelly has already mentioned St Mungo's and the need to report and to make sure that we have an understanding of where people are. Our outreach is very proactive, and I would again want to give that reassurance that we probably know who these people are. We are very active. We're out there engaging. There are support programs in place, and our outreach is very assertive in terms of really encouraging people to come indoors, and very connected through a number of different agencies, both from from the point of view of dealing with the issues as they stand in terms of people being out there on the street, but also then in terms of that very, very supporting some complex needs. And again, just to emphasize the point around, if someone is really in an emergency situation and needing support and help, then 999 would be the number to call. But the phone number for the StreetLink team has already been shared on the screen, and hopefully, as if by magic again, that can come up again for people to really help us to help those people who are out there by letting us know where they are, so that we can check in on them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Kelly. And those numbers are on the on the screen, because they're all people. Anybody can find themselves in a situation where they might be homeless. It can happen to anybody, and equally, we don't know what we don't know. So if you do see somebody, please do use that. As Kelly mentioned, it's deeper than rough sleeping as well. A lot of people find themselves in a more homeless position, and we're doing a tremendous amount to try and tackle that on a more long-term basis. And actually, we've just had a cabinet meeting this afternoon where we've just approved plans for a new development on Herbert Avenue in Poole, which will house 92 people who find themselves homeless, who are currently having to be accommodated in a bed and breakfast, and nobody should be forced to be in bed and breakfast, particularly over the festive season. And that's another example of how we're trying to bring forward new accommodation to try and help those people and get them on a path to a much more settled future. So thanks, and the information is at the bottom of the screen. we're getting a lot of questions, around COVID and around, particularly around vaccinations and what we're doing. And I mentioned we've got Rachel Partridge here today. So a question from Claire Taylor, which has come again from Facebook. And Claire asks, are you setting up a large COVID vaccination hub like we had at the Bournemouth International Centre? So that's a message from Claire there. And I'll bring Rachel in to answer. Rachel, this is a question we get asked a lot, because it can look like without that major...
Yes.
That there isn't action, but maybe you could give us a bit more information about that.
Yes, you'll all be aware, this is happening absolutely as we speak. So as of this morning, in the meetings that we had this morning, there will be additional sites coming on board in the BCP area, and that's going to be supplemented by pop-ups. So the detail of the location will be publicised as soon as it's firmed up, but we expect to see that being released in the next day or so in terms of additional sites, and certainly sites are being set up, and the existing sites have doubled their capacity. So we're going to be summarising and sharing as soon as we are aware of all the sites that are available. And just to note that I've said that there are 33 locations available for clinics and appointments, and when you go on the booking system, you may not get that offered immediately, but that's because it's about appointments that are available. So it's about checking to find somewhere that's suitable and located in a convenient position for you. So there are going to be new sites set up in BCP over the next couple of days. We've got 17 days, I think, until the end of December. So to say that there's a concerted, rapid amount of work going on to identify how to get vaccination sites within 20 miles at the very most of everybody across Dorset is happening now. It's obviously BCP is much closer together, so there are a range of sites being considered at the moment. And absolutely thank you to council staff and NHS staff and staff from across the public services, including fire and police, who are all helping to identify locations, identifying capacity, identifying volunteers to help set these things up in record time. So yeah, it truly is a multi-agency approach that's happening as we speak.
Thank you very much for that, Rachel. For those that are just joining us, this is our regular Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter Q&A session, particularly today talking about all the support that we're offering across a whole host of different areas as part of our winter resilience plan, but also your opportunity to ask about anything else. And we've got a number of people here that can help and hopefully answer your questions. And if we can't get through them all today, we've also got a team that will try and answer as many questions as possible during and after the event as well, because you can imagine there's lots of questions coming in, which we've trying to get through. If you do have any questions at all, please do pop them in there and we can try and answer them at pace, particularly if they're around that support around either COVID or our winter work as well. Let's have a look through some of the other questions. We've got a lot of questions about housing coming in. One again from Facebook, Ellie Irwin. Can you tell us more about BCP's housing plan, in particular of affordable housing? Well, affordable housing is one of those areas that we do struggle with. Most places struggle with, and perhaps more so around this area. So we've got a number of different ways, Ellie, that we're trying to tackle that. We've just taken through our new strategy paper around our housing strategy, which looks at around 24 sites. This is separate to the regen. We've got big regeneration aspects, which are all about kind of placemaking, but the kind of core housing sites and putting them in a much more programmed approach. And as I mentioned earlier on, we've just approved one today on Herbert Avenue, which will is for affordable rent. That's 94 people living there. We're about to open a new council housing scheme, again an affordable rent scheme at Luckham Road, and some really big plans. We're going to need thousands of them going forward. So two ways that we're doing that. First of all, how can we do it from a council point of view? So what land do we have, and how can we absolutely maximize that to provide mainly affordable homes? And there's a whole different versions of affordable that we have to work with as well, everything from affordable rent to affordable purchase to shared ownership. lots of different tenures. We're also doing at the moment something called our local plan, and that's the big plan, if you like, for how we're going to provide housing and employment and everything across the whole area. It's a huge piece of work that local authorities have to do. That's our big opportunity to look not just at what the council can do, but what we can put in planning policy to make sure that we embed affordability into the area. Just had our housing need assessment on that, and I'm not going to lie, Ellie, it's really stark. We do need to provide a dramatic amount of more affordable homes, and actually homes to rent as well, not necessarily just affordable rent, but also open market rent as well. And that document, as well as a consultation that we're about to launch on that, which is a issues and options consultation, which goes live in early January, will be your chance to input into where they should go. So which areas, which sites in particular, which parts of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole do we think are most ripe for trying to get as much development as possible? There's been a long-standing consensus that we need to protect as much of the Greenbelt as possible, which I've always been very in favour of. You know, equally, Greenbelt is a really good opportunity for affordable homes as well. So we'll have some choices in there, but before we do anything, we need to get the public's feedback. So it's really important to connect with that document as well. Kelly, I don't know whether there's anything more we want to talk about on the affordable housing point that I've missed out on, any specific places that people can go to if they find themselves in need.
Only to encourage people to approach as soon as you find yourself in any difficulty. The earlier that you engage with the council for advice around homelessness and those sorts of issues, certainly the better. There's really our role is to make sure that we focus on prevention, and that we're really supporting people to remain in their homes, as well as to deal with people in crisis. So my plea would be for early engagement with the council and other agencies that might be able to support. The only other thing that I would add in terms of do you have a new housing strategy, as you've covered, Councillor Broadhead? It's it's broad in its coverage in terms of that we need to meet future growth needs, as you've mentioned, and the local plan is absolutely critical to that. There's obviously a key sort of theme running through that in terms of preventing homelessness and rough sleeping, as well as then improving housing options and also housing conditions. So making sure that we have good quality homes and a focus there in terms of provision in our private rented sector. So really working with local landlords to address housing standards issues where they arise, and thinking about the significant private rented sector that we have within BCP and how that can operate as effectively as possible, and how people can access that as widely as possible. Finally, there's a real focus, of course, as well as those housing standards, really focus on safety, but also sustainability, as well as those affordability issues that you've outlined, Councillor Broadhead.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Kelly. And if you've got more specific questions, please put them into the chat bar for whichever medium you're joining us on. And if we can't answer it within this extended session, then we'll certainly get somebody to come back to you as soon as possible. Lots more COVID questions coming in, highlighting that we are in a, we still don't know really where we are with this new Omicron variant and what it is going to mean and what we can likely expect in the future. And we've got Rachel with us today, who by no means, I'm sure, has a crystal ball, but can hopefully give us a bit more guidance. I noticed a question came in early on the session, about 1:02 from Tommy Pittaway, which says, I'm a self-employed carpet fitter. How likely am I going to be told to stay at home at some point? Am I safe to go in and out of customers' houses? Rachel, I wonder whether you could give Tommy an answer.
In terms of the big question about whether or not you'll be allowed to continue going in and out of people's homes, obviously that's big political discussion that would happen at government, but certainly the message that we're getting at the moment is Plan B that's just been brought in, and the additional booster campaign is absolutely trying to mitigate against any further types of lockdown. I feel much more comfortable answering your more practical questions about whether you're currently safe to go in and out. I think there is something about protecting your own safety, and that's obviously vaccination, good hand hygiene, face coverings where practical, particularly as you're going into other people's homes. But there's also the thing about calling ahead and checking that nobody's symptomatic. So the message is trying to support people to continue operating in their daily lives as much as possible. So there hasn't been statements about that not being allowed, but there are the practical steps that I've just outlined in terms of maintaining that social distance and good ventilation. Obviously, you're going in and out of people's homes, so you'll be very aware and well established doing that. And obviously, for you as well, doing those regular twice weekly asymptomatic tests with lateral flow is another really important way that you're mitigating against risks to yourself, but also about inadvertently transmitted to anybody else.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Rachel. And again, you know, if anybody has any more questions, please do put them on. We'll try and answer them. We don't know all the answers. I don't think anybody does at this stage, but certainly we can give as much practical guidance as we've got in this area. I'll take one more question, and then we'll go to some more information about some of the other support that we're offering in other areas during this Christmas period. I had a few questions on Tatnam Road, which one from 12 minutes past 1 from Chris Welsh. I would like to know why on earth Tatnam Road is being considered for reopening on behalf of parents and children who use this route for school and walking to the town. Why? Really topical question, Chris, because we've just had a cabinet meeting where we had to make a decision on this. For those that don't know, obviously we've got huge plans across the area for sustainable travel, and just to be able to give the choice for people to travel in the best and most safe way that they can. A number of reasons. First of all, we want to have that choice, don't we? But also we are one of the most congested places in the country. And the only way we're going to be able to do that, there's not enough room to build more roads, is to try and give people the choice to travel sustainably if they want to, if they can, in a safe way. So if you can cycle, particularly for short journeys, I think there's a statistic in that something like if just 5% of people doing short journeys of less than 2 kilometers cycled, it would largely fix a lot of the congestion problems that we have at peak hours. And also it's the right thing to do. So we've had big programs like our Transforming Travel program, looking at very connected routes. We've got £101 million from government to try and do things in a way that gives that choice to people. However, some of the, particularly the emergency measures that have been put in the past have proved to be very controversial, particularly when it's less about choice and more about banning things. And this one in particular, the Tatnam Road, was a road closure which stopped cars going down that particular road. Very, very popular from those living on the road, but not so popular with the wider consultation. My colleague who's delegated to make that decision has always gone from the position, which I completely agree with, that ward councillors know best. So by and large, we're listening to the ward councillors. This particular one, however, the ward councillor position on this was quite out of step with public opinion. We saw 80% of people that were consulted in the MAID scheme wanting it reopened, and actually once a draft decision was made to keep it permanent, 90% wanted it reopened. So we've had some thinking today on what we can do in nature of that decision. Do we listen to the ward councillors or do we listen to the wider public? We've taken the decision that you can't ignore public opinion on this thing, particularly that wider public opinion. So we have taken the decision to not make that road closure permanent, to reopen it, but also that we need to make sure that we look at the issues that the local people have in that area and try and come up with more connected solutions. The Transforming Cities route that we've got is a very connected, sustainable route. This one was an isolated one that did see some concern that it knocked on traffic to other areas. So that decision hasn't been taken lightly. And what we've done is listened. We haven't said that we know better than everyone. We've listened to the public consultation and we've acted. So hopefully that gives a little background, Chris, as to that decision. Keep your questions coming in and we'll answer a few more in the moment. But, we labelled this our kind of winter plan, and there's a few areas that it's probably worth noting that maybe aren't topical right now, but are going to be important over this winter period. First of all, gritting. At the moment it's quite warm, but we can see how quickly that changes. We put some extra funds into our gritting routes to make sure that we have that as much as possible. Now, we can't treat all of the roads across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, but we do look at our priority routes that we are able to support, and we've now got some extra technology that helps us as well, looking at ice prediction systems and everything, so that we can make sure that we're actually gritting where it's most needed rather than just a little bit more arbitrarily. Some other kind of more positive stuff is all of the events that we're hosting across the Christmas and the winter period, because businesses are still open. We do need to support our local economy, and doing that in a very safe way, but mindful that they are pretty vital to the vibrancy of our area, is something that we all have to consider as well. If you haven't been to Christmas Tree Wonderland in Bournemouth, I would just urge you to check it out. It's outside, so it's nice and ventilated and it's safe. It starts at the Landdown, goes all the way through to the Triangle, and we've seen visitor numbers, back to, in fact, more than pre-pandemic levels. And there's a reason, because it's really cool. There's lots to do down there, particularly if you've got children, and of course it's much safer because it's in the open air. So if you haven't checked out the Christmas Tree Wonderland, please do check that out. We've got other events in Upton Country Park. You've got Santa's Woodland Grotto. We've got the Christmas Living Advent Calendar, which is taking place every evening at 6:15 throughout December. Surprise pop-up performances happening across Christchurch, for instance, at 6:15 from the 1st to the 24th of December. And you can check out all of those events on all of our websites. Also, we have our free festive parking offer that is underway as well. So every Thursday evening from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. and all day Sundays, you can park for free in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Town Centre car parks. And we're also supporting our district high streets as well on different days. And that's not just for parking as well. We've got offers for Beryl bikes and also offers for our bus operators as well. So, trying to very safely support our local economy during this time. So keep your questions coming in, and we'll try and go through some other questions as well. So let me just go through and see what else there is and whether we can answer some more. We've got a question for Catherine Avery, 29 minutes past. What support are you going to provide for children with special educational needs? Parents are crying out for holiday clubs where they're able to drop off their kids. Specialist schools in BCP do not currently provide holiday clubs. Not my area of expertise. Kelly, I don't know, or Jane, whether you might have more information on this, on the support that we're offering. We put an extra amount of money recently through and we're going to be putting even more in our budget soon. But anybody have any specific answers on that one, or is that one that we can go to Catherine Moore in the chat bar afterwards? Kelly?
I'm afraid I think it's one for the chat bar afterwards, if that's okay. Obviously, we've got, from a winter plan perspective, there's a number of different aspects around supporting children who are eligible for free school meals and those sorts of that support around household support fund. But we'd have to defer to our colleagues on a more detailed specific answer to that question.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll come back to you specifically with the answer to that, particularly around the out of school support around because I know we have packages in that place, so it's definitely there. Let me just have a look around some other questions that are coming in. A question for Rowena Ross at 1:35. Who can I contact regarding safer roads? I suggested speed humps near a school, having traffic wardens around at pickup time as double yellows ignored, very dangerously parked cars, accidents waiting to happen. Jane, you're our kind of lead member on kind of communication with communities. Now, we've got a lot of different consultations going on at the moment, but is there any specific advice you've got for Rowena on how people can get more involved with things like road safety?
Absolutely. I know that around nearly every school there's always problems, and residents are always worried about the safety of what happens when many parents are dropping off their children and collecting. At the same time, there are others arriving on scooters and walking. So what we are doing, starting in February, we've got a pilot for 4 different schools where we're calling it school streets, where those streets are blocked off. They're usually, it's most helpful when they're cul-de-sacs, but I'm not sure that all 4 of them are. But the roads are blocked off for half an hour, twice a day, so that only people can only walk in there with their little scooters and go into the school safely and sustainably. Obviously, we're hoping that this will encourage people to think differently about how they, bring their children to school and collect them, because doing it in a car is obviously not the best way, not for safety, not for the children's activity. situation, and it's a kind of a culture, really. I do understand that many parents have problems and have to get to work afterwards, but the people that we can persuade to try and change the way that they do that to a more sustainable walking, cycling, those sort of things would be helpful. And so those pilots that are starting in February, we're going to see how it works in BCP. They're right across the borough, spread across in different areas. So, we'll keep you posted, and we'll let you know how it goes later on after the couple of months. I think it's about 3 or 4, 1 term we're going to do it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jane. We've got about 5 minutes left, so if you have any final questions, we can try and deal with them now. Please put them in the chat bar, whether you're joining on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, or on LinkedIn. And at the very least, we'll get somebody to answer shortly. If not, we do have time probably for 1 or 2 more questions. I'm just looking through the list. It's not as easy as people think to look through and try and pick ones out, particularly when you're doing this at once. There was a question that I'd seen around ASB, which I just seem to have lost. If you can just bear with me a second. Catherine Avery at 122. Lots of ASB by the co-op near Asda on Holdenhurst Road have reported, but still lots of street drinkers there. Low wall doesn't help there. So it's really good intel, Catherine, and we'll feed that back to the team. As I mentioned earlier on, we don't know everything. We're trying our best. The Lansdowne area in particular, we've seen a lot of extra investment in, particularly around the public realm. If you haven't seen how that's coming along, please do check it out, because there's lots of different ways that you deal with antisocial behavior. You give vibrancy to an area, and that's why we've had not just our summer program of events, but as I mentioned earlier on, a whole host of events going on. You give activity to an area, and it stops the ability for people to the wrong kind of people to linger too long. And also, the more that we kind of lift the look of the area, then I think that helps as well. Hence our massive investment in public realm across the area. And also, we've got our Cleaner, Greener, Safer campaign, which is all about making sure that our streets look as clean and feel as safe as possible. Because if people have pride in their area, then they then equally they're much less likely to linger and do and make the area not so nice for other people. So we'll take that one away, Catherine, but we are putting a lot of investment into that area to try and make sure that it's as nice as possible into the future. I wonder if there's anything that we've missed out. We are about 1 minute away from the end, and I know that we've got a very special message from Chris Whitty to play at the end. I think a few of the takeaways that that we've heard from this session is that obviously COVID is still with us. We've heard about all the different ways that we're ramping up the vaccination program across Dorset, and all the ways that you can get involved and try and get your booster. I think the trick is we're making strong progress every day. So if for whatever reason you can't get through on the website, just try again. And as we heard from Rachel, on an hourly basis, we're adding capacity, including a few new temporary sites into the mix all the time. Clearly, if you haven't been vaccinated at all, it's never too late. Now is the time, particularly if you want to keep Christmas as open as possible. And then finally, as we've tried to outline in this session, there's a whole host of different ways that we have been trying to support the most vulnerable through this period. And we've got the Together We Can helpline that we've talked about before. If you're currently self-isolating, if you're currently vulnerable, if you need food or other essential items, that number is hopefully on the screen again, 0300 123 7052. That is the one-stop shop for all of that kind of stuff. And equally, we now have a household support fund in place, and that gives discretionary grants and advice, that gives food voucher schemes, investment in community food funding for our local voluntary organizations to help as well. So do check out our household support website, which gives all the information around that area. We've run out of time. I'm really sorry if there are any questions that we couldn't get through, but we do have a team on place to be able to hopefully answer as many more questions as possible. I'd like to thank the experts once again, Rachel, the Deputy Director of Public Health for Public Health Dorset, for joining us and answering the questions about all the great work that they're doing. Kelly Ansell, Director of Communities from the team in the council, and they're working their absolute socks off. Councillor Jane Kelly, who's really leading from the front in terms of engaging and supporting our most vulnerable. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you for listening and asking the questions. And now I'll pass on to a message from the real expert, Chris Whitty, who will be highlighting the importance of that booster vaccination programme. Happy Christmas, everyone.
There is a new variant of COVID-19, Omicron, which is highly infectious and spreading fast. Every adult in the country needs to get a COVID-19 booster vaccine. Boosters give you the best possible protection against the virus and should significantly reduce your risk of serious illness and hospitalisation. Get your COVID-19 booster vaccine to strengthen your protection. Please get boosted now.